Let's get into jury nullification, something you're, I'd say, pretty much an expert on.
I'm a huge fan of it because what people don't understand about the jury is that regardless of how big the government is, how ridiculous the government is, or how small the government is, ultimately, all the government is, these representative governments that are phony baloney representation, they are a compromise to actually having everybody meet in a room and get to agree to do something or not. And when you can't have that actually occurring and you don't have any option because there's government all over the world, the reason the jury works is that anything the government does, it's supposed to have the consent of the people. If the government is doing things without the consent of the people, then there is literally no difference between it and a criminal organization. And to say that you took a vote and a few extra people agreed to it and a few didn't, that doesn't matter. That doesn't work in any other form of life. You would have to very first agree that you're going to have a vote, that you will live with the results, even if it's just 5-4. Okay, I'll live with the 5-4. You're in a room, you got 9 people, you look around, you know these people. It's like, okay, I'd be willing to live with a vote. We'll take the vote. And if you come up short, you live with it. Okay, that's fine, but that's not what you get in ours. They force you to live with a vote I've never agreed to live with, which is that they decide who gets to vote, how they're going to vote, when they vote, and then who they get to vote for. And then the people who you elect go up and make votes that I have no say in, and they don't have to do anything they say. So that doesn't work. The reason that jury nullification is a complete and total veto of all that is that that's the opportunity. It's a political part of our system. It's not just part of the justice system. It's the way the people who have no other say get to have a say. And that is, I have a minority position. Basically, every position I hold is a minority position. It's totally and completely impossible for my position to ever carry the day in Congress or any other governmental system. It can never work because just not enough people believe what I believe and want what I want. And so I have no representation except for when I go and sit in a jury box and the government has dreamed up a law and said that if you violate this thing we wrote down, then you can be punished by the government. The jury system is such that you have to get unanimous agreement of 12 randomly drawn citizens who then get to vote on whether or not they think something like that is something that they want to punish as a violation of the law. And if they don't, well, then the government can't get a conviction. And so the law is dead letter. And once you can start understanding that that works in both civil and criminal cases, because the government stirs up the Department of Justice, which didn't even exist until after the Civil War. And now we're supposed to believe that the people agree to have this endless cadre of lawyers with infinite amounts of money going around imposing and enforcing these infinite amount of laws that nobody can know what they are in government courts. And that's something we agreed to. Well, that's not something that anybody agreed to in their right mind. Nobody would. And the check on it is the jury. That's why you have a constitutional right to a jury trial, because the government, regardless of how corrupt it is, regardless of how bad the prosecutors are, regardless of how bad the judges are, if people understand what juries are supposed to actually do, then the people remain in control. And you don't have to have these majorities in order to win. All you have to have is one person who goes in there, hears the case and says, that's a bunch of bullshit. I don't agree that that should be against the law. Not guilty. That's it. Now, you don't get an acquittal. All you can get is a hung jury. It's true the government would theoretically be able to try you again, but believe me, the system is so overwhelmed and backed up. If they start getting these types of hung juries at any pace at all, then they're not going to be able to continue because you have speedy trial requirements, and the prosecutors will simply be overwhelmed, and the witnesses they rely on, they'll all disappear. If it takes years and years and years to get to trial, it won't work. And so we only need a very small group of people, between 5 and 10% of the population, to understand it in order to bring all of it to a halt. And it happens in every kind of form of fashion. It's not just drug laws. They're not the only ones that you could easily nullify. Any of these bogus tax laws where they just want to tax people for this and that, out the window. All these phony baloney gun laws, out the window. All these phony baloney anti-speech laws, out the window. They couldn't get convictions in any form or fashion in criminal courts, and they couldn't get any kind of civil judgments against you. And so you'd have nothing to fear from the government that steps so far outside of line if the people understood. And if people can grasp this concept, because it's a big concept for people to break through on, because the brainwashing is so intense about the judge giving you the law, the jury just being there to determine the facts. There's so much brainwashing around that. But if people can just see how powerful this is, we don't have to do all this organizing. We don't have to get all these groups and knock doors and make sure that your representative is properly primaried, and you send him checks, and then you got to check his voting record. You don't have to worry how corrupt they are. None of that matters. It all falls away to, well, look, they've got to go down there and get the people to agree to this, and the people don't agree to it, so it's not going to work. And so they don't have to fear being arrested. They don't have to fear being threatened with prosecutions. They don't have to fear being bankrupted, having to go get a lawyer to defend themselves against a bunch of crap. They just be able to go in, know that they have 12 of their own citizens sitting in there. They could tell their story and just say, this is outrageous. This could be you. This is not reasonable. And you only have to convince one of those people in there to say, yeah, I agree. This is ridiculous. This is over the top. And you're safe. And if you think about all the different laws and how much division there is about what people can agree to and what they can't agree to, and you read the news, even what they're telling us, the country's massively split. Well, that just tells you they wouldn't be able to enforce basically any of the laws they have on the books outside of things like murder, rape, robbery, stuff people actually want enforced. All the rest of it, these made up things, all this woke crap and all these phony baloney, regulatory this and that the EPA passes, the FDA passes, the Department of Transportation passes. None of those things could ever possibly be enforced. And that would be it. We'd be free from it. And once you're free from it, then we'd have enough time to be able to re-educate people in other ways so we could get the decentralization method out there and people could start seeing it. And that's why it's a key, because it could actually buy us a sufficient amount of time to try to make some other changes, because we have so little time left before the doors close.
I heard a jury nullification. I didn't know what it was, but years ago, Doug Stanhope, comedian, had a joke where he said, I was on a jury and this guy was being tried for drunk driving. And I was like, you know what? This guy seems pretty cool. I'm just going to say no, because I don't think, and I think it was more of a joke than it was trying to tell us what jury nullification was. But that the idea of jury nullification in that setting always stuck with me. And then through your show was the first time I heard jury nullification. It's like the light bulb goes off, and
it does, right? If you've got a brain, once you see, oh wow, this is how the people actually get to stay in charge. And drunk driving is a classic example. They have all these DWI task force, the federal government finances, and drunk driving this and drunk driving that. There's tons of terrible drivers. If this is about bad drivers, okay, that's fine. I want to be safe from bad drivers too, but someone who just happens to not use their turn signal, and the cop pulls them over and they just happen to be over the so-called legal limit. Lots of alcoholics have absolutely no problem at all driving over that legal limit. And if it's really about being safe, then okay, let's make it about being safe. To me, I would even be okay with a driver's license. You go down, you take the thing on a simulator. They've got fantastic simulators. You got to make the driving test way harder than it is now. Any loser can pass that thing now. And that's why there's so many bad drivers out there. Make the thing very difficult to pass. And you can go take that simulated driving exam as drunk, as stoned, as messed up as you want. Okay, they draw your blood out, they take your levels. If you pass the thing, well, you're just as good a driver as anyone else they're letting on the road. So if this is about safety, obviously you're just as good, completely stoned out of your mind, as the little old lady down the road is who can't drive, or the dumbass who's constantly texting that can't drive. If it's about safety, then we can address safety, but it's not about safety. It's about all these other things. And so to me, just pointing it out right there, if I'm in a DWI jury and the guy hasn't done anything, And you have to go through this thing, and they're trying to show you, well, he blew a .07, and that's over the legal limit by X amount. And, you know, if it had taken the thing 15 minutes later, he would have been under the legal amount. Those are all made up. They aren't about public safety. See, that's not about public safety. And they sell it as public safety, but in fact, it's not about public safety. And it's just the typical way they're incredibly disingenuous. And again, if you're on there and you think, well, this guy's obviously driving like a complete idiot, I don't care if he's drunk or not drunk. It's the behavior in the car that bothers me, not whether the guy's drinking or not, whether he's pissed off. If he's driving like an idiot because he's mad and he's trying to show off for his friends, or he's racing with his friends and he's sober as hell, does that make it better? No, it doesn't change it at all, right? And so if he's driving fine and he's over the legal limit and he's not posing a threat to anybody, I don't understand. How is it a crime? It's a crime because of all the reasons all these other things are so-called crimes. It's made up, and it's not an actual crime because there's no mens rea.